Hi, I'm Miss Montai, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to record your speech on camera. So, there are a few things that you can do when recording a speech to really make your speech stand out. First and foremost, you need to take into account the location in which you are recording. Obviously, you should be aware of where you're recording. Make sure there are no distractions. Consider the noise. Make sure there are no distractions in terms of noise in the room in which you're recording. Also, make sure there's no visual distractions. You may not be able to see there is actually a ceiling fan in the room where I'm recording. Were I doing this for a grade or a competition, I would turn that fan off because it can cast shadows. You want to make sure, as I said, distractions in terms of sound. The other thing is you want to take into account your lighting. Lighting is huge. Now, when it comes to recordings for a grade or for speech team, they're not taking points off for lighting. But here's the thing, guys, it definitely can help you. When you are on video, you want to look good. And when you look good, and the lighting is good, it helps for your audience to be able to see your face and your body more effectively. When you are on a recording, really the two most important things you want to think about is how do you look, how does your face look, and how do you sound? Because that's what's going to help to sell your speech. So let's talk lighting. You want to make sure that you are well lit, meaning, can the audience clearly see your face and your facial features? So, some ways to do that. Make sure that you don't have just one big light from up above, or worse yet, a light from below. A light from below is going to make you look like a ghoul. It's going to be all dark and shadowy. You also want to avoid a light from behind or like a window. You can see I've just got a wall here. This is not the ideal location, but in my house, it's probably the best that I've got to work with. So really the best way to light yourself for a speech is to have two lights from 45-degree angles because they'll cast the light on you in a really even way. You can see, and I don't have that in this space, I have a light from above and I have some light at the side. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. But you can see it's casting some shadows. But again, your main objective is how does your face look? Because you want the audience to see all of your facial expressions. So the next thing we want to think of in terms of location is the angle of the frame and the angle of the shot. So what I see a lot of times when I am watching student videos is students are way too tight in the frame. This isn't good. First of all, sometimes students, part of your body should never be cut out. Your head never cut out. If I can't see you, I don't feel connection to you. The other thing is if you're real tight in the frame, look what happens. The second I put my hand down, my audience can't see the rest of my arms. And then when I gesture, it looks super weird and awkward. So you want to make sure that that shot, I would generally say, get from like the thighs. I have watched videos where it's full body. If you are able to project loudly enough, that works too. But you want to make sure that you can see your body and your movement. Also, you want to make sure you're straight on. So just so you know, my laptop is currently propped up on two large boxes. I have a couple books wedged under it. If you have a tripod, even better. Don't, feel bad about asking a parent or a friend to be your camera person, as long as they can do it and hold that camera straight. I have watched videos where the camera's shaking and that's horribly distracting and you don't want to do that. So you definitely want to make sure that camera is straight on. Nobody wants to be looking up at someone while they're speaking. It's distracting, it's weird, and it's awkward. Don't do it. The last thing in terms of location and appearance is the way that you're dressed. Now, for class, we generally don't have rules about dress. For speech team, obviously, we know how we dress, but you also want to be conscious of, for those of you who wear, like the fun shirts underneath, things show up differently on video. So it's often said that when you're on video, don't wear stripes, no flashy patterns, don't wear a color that blends or clashes with your background. So my background is gray. A moment ago, I had a gray suit jacket. It did not look good. I looked just gross and washed out. So again, you're not going to get judged or evaluated on that, but it definitely can make you either stand out in a positive way or it can distract those that are judging you. So avoid stripes and patterns. Just a thought. So now let's talk about your voice. For some reason, when we're on camera, a lot of us think there's a microphone. I don't really have to talk very loud. And that is a false assumption. Number one, always, always, always double check your mic. Do a sound check. Record yourself for about a minute, stop, check, make sure your sound levels are good. When I have watched videos, that's the most frustrating thing. If I can't hear the student and they have the ability to re-record, I am not going to be generous in my evaluation. Secondly, just as you know when it comes to public speaking, you need to fill that space. So you should not be pushing. When I watch videos, I can tell, I can literally see when a student is pushing. So make sure you're projecting deep down from that diaphragm. So again, make sure you're filling the space. You want to avoid what's called vocal fry, which is where you kind of sit in the throat. A lot of us, especially younger people, especially young girls, have a tendency to do that. And on video, it's very obvious. And microphones pick that sound up like crazy. And it's really, really distracting to the ear. When I've judged speeches that have been recorded, I judged a poetry section the other day, and I can pick up that vocal fry. Make sure you have a lot of energy. When you're on video, it's really easy to fall flat and seem stiff and stale. So make sure that you have a ton of energy vocally and physically. Make sure your face needs to sell it. So, and I would even go as far as to say, there are certain things that come across on video that don't come across in person. Your audience can really zoom in. So let your face, do the talking, let your face really sell it. And along with that, you have to make sure that you avoid certain negative behaviors like fillers. They're so noticeable when you're on video. Also, if you do make a mistake, don't repeat yourself. Don't try to fix it. And that's something I know, you've all been taught, but it's very noticeable when you're on camera. So I already mentioned the eyes and the face a little bit, but just to reiterate, when you're on camera with your body, so you have this space. You want to make sure, as I mentioned, your face, really, really use that face. Be very expressive. It comes across. Be careful not to overdo it though, because you are on camera. You are, in this tight space. Your audience is tuned in. One of the things that tends to happen a lot with people when they are talking on camera is the head tilt. Try to avoid that. It can be distracting. So really focus on centering yourself. I always say stand with legs shoulder width apart, avoid that head tilt, and let your face be expressive. Use gestures. That's why you want this wider camera frame. But when you're on camera, you have to be careful that your gestures are very natural. Many times, many of us who present, we use these gestures that I refer to as speechy. And they work when we're in a big space, when we have a big audience. You know, we can talk, we can walk, we can talk about, you know, I have 2 things I'm going to talk about today. You probably just laughed at me. It looks silly on camera if I gesture that large. So instead, dial it down when you're on video. You know, I have 2 things I'm going to talk about today. And, you know, and then we're going to focus on this. Be natural. What I always say is think of it as a conversation. And when you're on camera, it's really like a one-on-one conversation. Talk to that camera like you're talking to one person. Try to ignore the fact that it might be 5, 10, 15 more people watching, and just pretend you're talking to one person. So again, shrink down those gestures, focus on being natural. And lastly, the eye contact. So a lot of times when I watch speeches on video, students just don't know where to look. I see this a lot. Looking up, it's kind of awkward. Sometimes even students who don't have their speeches memorized, I can tell they're reading off the screen. I should never be able to see you doing this. Not only is it distracting, it feels so disconnected. So again, talk to me. And here's the advantage of presenting on video versus live. I can feel like we're having a one-on-one conversation. So look at the camera. You don't need to look to the sides. You don't need to pretend like you're talking to imaginary people who aren't there. The only time you need to break that focus is if you are presenting a speech where you have an imaginary focal point. You know, if you have like a character you're talking to. Otherwise, look at your audience, talk to us. And I know that feels weird. I know that feels awkward. But at this point, we should all be used to talking to a camera, to a screen. So imagine, this is what I always say to students in my class, imagine you are talking to someone on the other side of that camera. You know, pretend you're in a breakout room or a one-on-one Zoom. Really connect. Take your speech and pretend it's a one-sided conversation. Those are the speeches that are so effective on camera. Those are the speeches that the audience really wants to watch, wants to listen to. And if you're unsure, I would recommend, you know, watch some of the really great speakers. A really effective one, Michelle Obama, during the Democratic National Convention, she sat on a couch her entire speech, and it was compelling. It was engaging because she looked at the camera and she talked to her audience. And there's, of course, lots of other ones. So those are my tips. And above all else, most important thing is be natural. Talk to your audience. All right, thank you.